Welcome to the Berkshires Gone By, history and folklore about the westernmost and most beautiful county in Massachusetts. I'm your host, Brooke. It used to be that documentation of one's life could be sparse, that a person could be born, live a long while, and die, with nothing to commemorate them but the script upon their gravestone, if they were given one. Countless people lived lives like this before the times of the census and birth certificates. But it's not that their lives were without interest. It's just that there was little to no paperwork involved. So how could someone be sure to leave a mark on the world? Become a famous artist, writer, actor, politician, a big name in the military, or crazy? That may not have been the actual thought that ran through Sue Dunham's head, but it worked. Sue Dunham was born in 1767. Not a whole lot more was divulged by her herself, but documents show that she was probably the same Sue Dunham born on Martha's Vineyard to an 18-year-old Tabitha and a 22-year-old Cornelius Dunham. She was the second child of a very large family who relocated to the Berkshires. When she was still a young lady, a tent revival had traveled through the county, preaching to anyone who'd listen. Back then, these were quite the fad, and people flocked to them, many more for the spectacle than religion. But it may have been that Sue took the preacher's words to heart, and this could have affected her negatively. The preacher's sermons of hell, coupled with the story of her father's forbidding her relationship with her sweetheart, may have turned her mind in such a way that spinsterhood seemed better in existence than burning in the underworld. It was certainly the claim of Catherine Sedgwick in her book New England Tales that love drove her mad. Sue herself claimed that she was driven crazy by a little politics and a little religion. Either way, sometime during her young adulthood, she left her family's home, or perhaps was made to leave, and began to wander. She carried what little she had, and dressed in a mismatched manner, with an attempt at femininity. Sometimes only one shoe, her dress always tattered, but flowers upon her hat. As her siblings came of age and married, they moved to their own homes, scattered about the Berkshires. But she didn't go to live with any of them. She'd visit, but she never moved in. The documents that may divulge to us her family history also show that when she was 1 year old, another daughter was born. This girl would grow to adulthood, marry, and have children, live a fulfilling life, and pass on in 1815. Her name was Susanna. A Susan born, and then right after that, a Susanna. Why were two girls, born so close together, given two names so similar? Did their parents see something in Sue that didn't sit well with them? Something that made them think that she might not live to adulthood? It was at the time a custom to try one's best to make sure that a favored or family name made it to the next generation. If a couple had a child and it was given the sacred family name, but died young, that name was often given again to the next born of the same gender. Working on my own family tree, I have found 3 little girls, all named Thankful, but born to the same mother and father, because the first 2 given that name didn't survive very long. Was there something already terribly wrong with the 1-year-old Sue? Perhaps she was a very sickly infant? Could this have led to some sort of mental illness? Could this have laid the path for the rest of her life? Of course, it's just a theory. What is known is that she may have been the first homeless person in the area. a wanderer who walked the width and span of the county during her long years of rambling. She made the miles vanish beneath her small feet. She wasn't at all bad-looking. When she was young, she had a round face, large eyes, small Cupid-bowed mouth. She was once called the Belle of Savoy, and people surely didn't avoid her. In fact, she was written about and painted, documented over and over for her humorous conversation and wit. This is a fascinating thing, when at the time people without all of their mental faculties were commonly shunned, but there was something about Sue. As she grew older, Sue learned tricks to keep herself fed. She begged, which was strongly frowned upon, but no one seemed to mind when it was Sue. Was it pity? Did everyone see in her what her parents might have when they gave the next daughter who came along her name? Sue learned to steal. One story tells that she was beneath the great Pittsfield elm that once stood in Park Square, when a group of young women on break from a nearby mill came walking along. She popped into view and bid them to kneel before the great honored elm. She told them some mumbo-jumbo about paying homage to the great old soul of the elm, but was sure to instruct them to put their well-packed lunch pails behind their backs before bowing to do so. The young women, desperate for any fun, went along with the game. They all knew her. Everyone knew crazy Sue Dunham. As Sue chanted, the young women concentrated their attention on the tall tree before them. A short while later, when one had grown bored of the game, she realized that she no longer heard Sue's voice among their own. The young lady turned and found that their lunch pails had been pilfered. Their meals had vanished, and so had Sue. Another similar story happened with a group of boys carrying corn. She duped them in much the same way she had the young ladies. The same thing happened again to a group of girls, transporting delicious apples. Sue also learned to fish. At one time she was doing so when a group of prominent men found her. When they asked what she was doing, she told them fishing. Then, for some odd reason, they asked her, "For what?" She answered, "For the devil." One of the men asked what she used for bait. So she answered, "Doctors and lawyers," the group to whom she spoke being comprised of such. Maybe it wasn't that Sue was crazy. Maybe it was just that she wasn't willing to take any guff. What can fishing look like but fishing? If anything, Sue seems rather modern. And despite Sue's thefts and begging, she was never arrested or charged with any crime. People seemed to accept that losing their meals might be the price you pay for playing one of Sue's games. Sue was even known to swap babies left unattended in their baby buggies with one another. Unsuspecting mothers never seemed very distressed upon finding out that this prank had been pulled, as everyone in the town knew everybody else, and the babies would soon be swapped back. On a softer note, Sue would also take walks to cemeteries and grieve at the graves of people she didn't know. Sue was written about and made famous in her own time. So much so that Fanny Appleton Longfellow heard of her and invited her to dinner. She had to say about her, "She is a streak of lightning," and called her shrewd. As for her looks, though Sue was much older when they met, Fanny called her handsome. Fanny commented on her cleverness, but when asked what had become of her life, Sue simply said that insanity runs in my family. And Sue's cleverness was always in use, against any enemy. When a group of mischievous boys crossed her path, they recalled that she was of the religious sort, and so told her, as a trick, that the devil had died the day before. Sue responded by saying, "You poor fatherless children." Many children grew up believing that Sue was some sort of witch. With her tricks and her schemes, she may have seemed like one, though no one was really frightened by her. And so the years passed, on and on. Sue kept wandering. She was out in every type of weather, in every time of year. She did find shelter in the homes of some people who couldn't help but bring the poor woman in, on the coldest of nights or in the mightiest of storms. But her own actions were often the reason why she was never invited back. On one occasion, she was at the home of Abel West, when it seemed a clever joke popped into her mind. Abel came down the stairs in a hurry after smelling smoke, and found that Sue was burning her clothes in the fireplace. She sat before the roaring fire, dressed in his own. "I heard that Cain killed Abel," she told Abel West, "so I thought I might as well have Abel's clothes." Did she want to alienate herself from the generosity of other Berkshirites? She must have understood that news of such actions would spread quickly, and that future invitations might be few and far between. It just didn't seem to bother Sue. Though her family doesn't feature in any of the stories left behind, when finally the 50 years of walking the county had worn her too thin, she found shelter in the home of one of her brothers, in the town of Windsor. It said that after living for so many years out of doors, she didn't recognize her own image when it was shown to her in a mirror. It is also said that she began to regain some of her senses as she settled into home life, that the foggy years of wandering began to clear into sharp memory, that she could suddenly recall with perfect accuracy the order and disorder of her life, and that at times it seemed to delight and dismay her. After a few years spent with her brother's family, Sue died on the 14th of December, 1852. Her funeral, which was held at the South Congregational Church in Pittsfield, was a massive affair. The crowd spilled out onto the steps. She was laid to rest in the town of Windsor, not far from her brother's home. But the Berkshires' fascination with and love of Sue didn't fade with her passing. She's been memorialized in a few books, including The Secret Integration and Gravity's Rainbow, both by Thomas Pynchon, as well as in New England Tales by Catherine Sedgwick. Her image was painted in beautiful detail by George Williams and can be seen in the Berkshire Museum. There's also a plate made by the company of James Cluse, which depicts the great elm tree which stood in Park Square, but in its foreground is the small figure of a woman, perhaps put there for scale, to demonstrate the immense elm's great height. The little figure, depicted in blue, is holding what may be the hand of a child, but legend has it that this woman is in fact Crazy Sue Dunham, forever memorialized in this beautiful little scene. Sue managed to cement her image into Berkshire history when many women of her time faded into obscurity with little to no documents to their existence. Maybe she was crazy. Maybe she wasn't expected to live to adulthood. Maybe her family shunned her. Maybe religion scared her. Maybe love broke her. Or maybe she was simply not interested in the normal humdrum life of a woman of her era. She never married, and so no man was her master. Never had kids, so was not obligated to be anyone's caregiver. Never had to keep house or work at endless chores. And because of her cleverness and the charity of others entertained by her personality, she never needed to find a job. She did just as she pleased and went where she wanted. She even seemed immune to laws, getting away with crimes that would have sent anyone else to jail for at least a few nights. She was free, utterly and completely, for the majority of her long life. And isn't that what just about everyone wants? This has been The Berkshires Gone By. Created, written, directed, and read by myself, Brooke Renier, and co-produced by Deanna Garner. You can find brand new Berkshire-related images every day on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook by searching for The Berkshires Gone By. You can also find new episodes posted on Facebook and YouTube as soon as they come out, or you can visit www.theberkshiresgoneby.com to find every episode we've ever made, along with images pertaining to each topic. Our email address is theberkshiresgoneby@gmail.com. We hope you'll join us for our next episode. Thanks for listening.